Hey, my friends, it's Bill McDonald, the Reading and Writing Doctor here. Welcome to CREST Online Recorded Training, Part 3, Lesson 1, the Constructed Response Questions. In the same way that I have tried to go from simple to complex, from the bottom of the barrel to the top, from the bottom of the ladder to the top in editing and revising, I want to try to, as much as possible, try to guide you through the constructed responses in the same way, going from perhaps the simplest responses to the most difficult in terms of how complex and rigorous the answers are. Some of those answers that have more than one response have 3, 4, or 5 responses. They have to be all put in the right place. And unfortunately, the state hasn't determined if you get all of them correct, you'll get 2 points. Yes. But if you get maybe 4 out of 5, 3 out of 5, 2 out of 5, 1 out of 5 correct, the director of writing told me in an email they haven't determined how much is enough to get partial credit. And I'm hoping that common sense will surface and that they'll decide if there's more than one correct answer and your students get at least one of the answers correct, except for multi-select where it's multi-part, where it's part B is dependent on part A. I can understand that if you don't get part A correct, then you won't get part B. Now, the one that I want to start on, besides making sure you remember that the first box in my advanced folder says regular multiple choice with paper pencil test. You might see A, B, C, D for odd and F, G, H, J for even. On the PC, the computer online test, you're going to see just A, B, C, D, and you pick one or more of those because of the more than one correct answer. The first box is that one. The one I want to talk about today for reading teachers, and I'm going to go just as far as I feel like so we don't get too tired in the video. The box number two that says text entry, string of text, a number, a word, or a phrase. So because the majority of you who answered the survey said you were reading teachers from different grade levels, I'm going to suggest that because it says that all the non-literary, all the non-story passages are going to be about cross-curricular content. In other words, the words that your students see are going to be vocabulary, that's coming from science and social studies, as well as the math and other areas. But it does say that on the blueprint to be very cautious that even though you're the reading teacher, all of the vocabulary and content that your students will be learning in the previous grades up to that grade could be covered on that test. And so level 1, I'm going to suggest that you get some sort of a container that we're going to call word bank words, where each week you're going to talk to the science, social studies, math, even the PE teachers, any vocabulary that they're going to discuss. Maybe if each teacher could give one, two, or three vocabulary words, when your students have a string of words, a phrase, or a number, they're going to have to understand a word and what that vocabulary word means so that they can see it in the context of a sentence. And so what I'd recommend that you do is have an ongoing word bank where every time that you introduce students to vocabulary during your spelling slash vocabulary time, that you have kids be able to earn tickets for when they speak those words that they're learning from the other subjects, and each week have this list that can go inside their reading, writing portfolio, their binder that will grow, and have one section just for vocabulary and all of the meaning of the words uh, in context, at least in a sentence. And so when your students are using the words with their mouths, have somebody whose job it is for that group to write their name on a ticket and whatever word or couple of words, a short phrase that they use. And then once a week, once a month, once every 6 weeks, have a raffle where the kids can be rewarded for remembering and retaining the vocabulary, because we have to remember that we are the reading teachers, but the students are going to be exposed to informative passages that will have social studies and science and perhaps things that they'll be learning in band and PE, there are different sports and UIL. Like there's a lot of different ways. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen with you and show you on the folder which one we're going to focus on. Text entry, a string of text, number, word, or phrase. Now, what I suggest that you do is go from the known to the unknown. In other words, I'm going to show you on lesson one how, with reading, how with science, with social studies, and with math, how would a string of text, a number, a word, or a phrase look like in multiple choice form, so that if we were to remove that choice and the students had to type it in or plug it in, then what would it look like? And so I'm going to show you uh, two different ways to attack that. And then what we'll do is once I've done that with the known, this past year's actual test in reading, social studies, science, math, algebra, because there's tons of different grade levels represented in our training, I will give you practice where your kids will plug in a word, a phrase, or a number or a string of text, like it says here on number 2. So I chose one question from each grade level. So if you see here, the very first question in the 3rd grade test says, what does the word snatched mean in paragraph 1? And so all your students would have to type would be one word. Or if you switch this around, it could ask, which word in paragraph 1 means the same as grabbed? And so because the answer is going to be snatched, then that would be a term that I would probably make sure my students add to their vocabulary. Anything that's inside a paragraph that's either on or slightly above your students' normal speaking or writing vocabulary, it might be an opportunity to do that. So your students would either type the word grabbed or the word snatched, but just so you can see it in context, let me show you paragraph one. Uh, make sure it did it say paragraph. The question one was in paragraph 11. I'm sorry, two ones. Paragraph 11. It was on the same page. I didn't even have to turn the page. Sorry about that. So there it is. And so I would suggest, because the paragraph is so short, that they read it in context of the paragraph. What came right before it that might give me a clue what came after it if I still don't know. The crow did exactly as the fox told him. Mother Crow snatched, verb, a ruby necklace in her beak and flew away. Well, the author decided to say, let me show you a picture of what one part of the comic strip would look like. This is the in her beak part and flying away. And if you look right behind the bird, you can see the person holding the her hands out so that the student can read between the lines, that snatch means to grab. So that's how I would recommend that you do for number one. Now, I want to tell you that I have a program, I have Adobe Acrobat Professional, where if you and your district decide, and make sure you write this down so you can remember to talk to your principal or to your grade level or your district coordinator. What I can do for certain grade levels and subjects is, since you're going to use the release test as benchmarks, I would highly recommend that you have me go in to the PDF file, and what I'll do is I'm going to make 25 to 30%, 40%, because we don't really know. We just know that the highest amount of questions on a test that can be multiple choice is 75. So there'll be one extended essay question on, for example, this is the third grade reading test. I'll give you two short answer questions. I'll give you several of these constructed type responses, keeping in mind that it will be a total of 75% or less being multiple choice, and up to 25% or possibly higher, because they said 75% multiple choice is the max. So it's possible that your students could get 25, 30, 35% open-ended, constructed, or extended response. So make sure you message me or email me. I will turn all of the benchmarks in all of the release tests in all of the subjects to the structure that your students could possibly see next year, so that they're already going to be practicing the format that they're going to get, because my version of Adobe PDF allows me to remove the answer choices, and I can make it sort of like an online test in the format that your students will see. So it's going to take a little bit of work, but I'm willing to do that. Just message me or email me if you would like me to do that for you. Fourth grade, a different way to see. Again, it's just a phrase here. Which definition of check is used in line 21? And again, if the answers are open-ended, which definition? It would be, your students would write definition 1, definition 2, definition 3, or definition of 4. So what I would suggest that your students do, because we're not looking at the answers, is use the checks that are there in a sentence to check, to mark. I went ahead and checked off the students as they entered the room. I marked off the students. Control. I need to keep that student in check in terms of how much he's allowed to talk. I have to control how much he's allowed to talk. To check. I think I know the answer, but I better check with my mom. I better search. Probably a better one. I know. I think it's in my backpack, but I better check to be sure. I better search my backpack to be sure. To study, to check, to study. Check, study. Trying to figure out how to use that one. That's kind of a weird one. To check. Tell you what, since that's not going to be the answer, I would like for your challenge to be try to use study in a sentence, making it mean check. When you check for understanding, you're not studying, you're seeing if they did study. So that's why I'm having a little bit of a hard time. So let's look at line 21 and see how they used check so that we can see which definition it was in terms of the word. The boys check all around, but nothing. They are walking to their seats, but Matt abruptly stops. Now, remember, when they ask you about a question and you're not sure, this is the red light. So the first thing that you should do is click the yellow light and go back 1 or 2 or 3 lines. So Matt says, what's it called? Space ride, Nelson responds. Will you help me look? And so look is a clue. Sure. The boys check all around. The boys look all around. So which one in the context means the closest to the word check is definition 3. So your students, if the question says which definition, your students would not write to search, your students would write definition 3. So make sure they understand what the question is, because I'm worried that because they're very specific with their questions wording, your students need to be specific in the answer. Definition 3 would be the answer there. Let's do one more for today. We'll do 6th, 7th, and 8th grade tomorrow. So here's a string of text, all right? Even though they have capital letters, these are not complete thoughts. So it's just a phrase or a string of text. So the question says, who is the author most likely addressing in the selection? In other words, who is the author writing to? Since we're not talking, we're writing. Who is the author writing to? Who is the intended audience? And so one way to check to see who our audience is to look at titles and topics. So let me backtrack to the title. I'm going to put a T above my head. The benefits of pets. Okay. A benefit is something positive. What are the good things about having pets? Exercise benefits. So, benefits of pets is my title, my central idea. There's exercise benefits, and then they'll give some examples of that. There's calming benefits. The way that's positive again, the way that dogs will help you calm down. Sometimes we need to calm the dog down. Health benefits. How can having a pet benefit my health? And emotional benefits. How can having a pet help me emotionally? And so for your kids who struggle, if they can't handle the entire paragraph, then have them read the first sentence because it's sort of like the topic sentence of the paragraph and sometimes the main idea of the paragraph. So petting a dog or a cat can prevent sudden illness. So just being able to touch the dog keeps you from getting sick, apparently. Pets can make people feel very happy and also keep away feelings of loneliness. So it keeps you happy and keeps away loneliness. That's a benefit. And so I'm going to guess that those are all, the audience is probably somebody who's thinking about getting a pet because it doesn't say in the title a specific kind of pet, it just keeps it vague. And so, without looking at the answer, again, going from known to unknown, I would probably say the audience is a person who's thinking about getting a pet. So then you look at the answer, someone seeking ways to pet allergies. That was only about one section about sickness, considering whether someone considering whether to have a pet. Well, if I'm going to have a pet, what are the benefits of having a pet? And that was there, so that could work. Someone trying to find a home. Since those were not things, places to take pets, those were reasons we should get one, the good things that happen when you have a pet. It's more B than C. Someone wanting to learn about different types of pets. It doesn't talk about, there's probably examples of pets, but if you look at the titles, the title of the selection and the title of each section and the topic sentence of each paragraph only, you can tell, you'd be able to infer that they're trying to, that the audience is, when they say who, that means someone. So that's why all four say someone who's thinking about getting a pet. And again, that would be what your students would type, and they would get the answer as long as they had uh, having a pet or getting a pet or buying a pet or uh, anything like that. Uh, Probably if they wrote getting a dog or a cat, I'm not sure if they would give credit for that type of an answer. And again, why am I showing you this on the multiple choice? Because I want to show you those answers that are already there will be removed, and your students need to be able to see what is it that the word or the phrase or the string of text is going to look like, so that when I do type my own, then I'll be able to have a better understanding because I'm just going to use the examples of words or phrases or a string of text or numbers. So what we'll do in our next video, part 2, will be for 6th, 7th, and 8th. And if I have time, we'll include the 9th and the 10th grade in there. But again, what I'll try to do on each grade level is give you a little bit of a different example of what a string of a string of text might look like, a word, a phrase, and then I'll cross over into science, social studies, and math before we get into the next box. And again, we'll take the constructed responses from the simplest ones to the most difficult. And again, it's kind of based on my opinion, but I'm trying to look at it from the point of view of a student who struggles with reading entire passages and paragraphs. So let's start with words, phrases, and sentences first, and simple questions that are text structures like cause and effect, etc. So once we get through the reading, the math, the social studies and science, the examples of what string or text look like, I will have some string, or I'll have some short paragraphs, little mini passages for you in reading, in math, in social studies and science, so that your kids can practice that in the actual online format. So hope you liked it. Take the ideas you like. I would suggest highly that because a lot of vocabulary is going to come into play, that you start a word bank where your kids get rewarded for talking and writing with the vocabulary that they're learning each week. Take care. God bless.